Northeast Barracks. Today is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. It is 9:18 a.m. Good morning. Would the staff at the barracks please introduce yourself for the record?
Lieutenant Jeremy Burns, Executive Officer.
Risk Swear Classification.
Lisa Frazier on classification.
All right. Well, thanks for accommodating us today. And we have before us, I think, our only case at the barracks this morning. Mr. Arnold, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and your DOC number.
Christopher Arnold, 49-1920.
Mr. Arnold, my name is Cheryl Renassa, serving as chair today. Seated to my left is Mr. Alvin Roche. To my right is Mr. Bonnie Jackson. I'll read some identifying information into the record, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Jackson. As your case has been assigned to her this morning, she'll take the lead on the interview. I want to first acknowledge some folks that we have who are here in support. We have Mr. Kerry Myers with the Parole Project. We have Ms. Mary Mitchell, Mr. James Arnold, all who will be speaking on your behalf. Also present watching is Georgia Arnold, and here with us is Christy Jeremy as well with the Parole Project. You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Arnold, you're classified as a first felony offender. You're currently serving a 40-year sentence for January 18, 2005 sentencing date for a conviction of armed robbery in Terrebonne Parish. Your parole eligibility date is June 28, 2023. You have a good time date 36, and your full term date is in June 2043. Does all that sound accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you answer Mrs. Jackson's question?
Excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Arnold. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Very nervous.
Understandable. So we're just going to talk about some things surrounding your case and you as a person. So just relax, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Start with something easy. How old are you?
I'm 50 years old, ma'am.
And how much time have you actually served on this sentence?
19 and a half years.
You originally were California, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How'd you end up here in Louisiana? And more specifically, how did you end up robbing the bank? So first tell us how you ended up here in Louisiana.
Some guys I was hanging out with, they travel here in Louisiana. One of them had some family in Terrebonne Parish, and they traveled here in Louisiana, and they planned to rob a bank. I was still in California. They called me in California and asked me to help them rob a bank. And so I made the worst decision of my life that day. I said yes.
But you came to Louisiana with the understanding that there was going to be a bank robbery here, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, although your offender class on your master, DOC master record, you had some issues in California, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Had some drug-related charges in California?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you receive a felony conviction in California? Or
Yes,
a related offense?
yes, ma'am.
So tell us about your drug use. When you started using drugs, what were your drugs of choice and how often were you using drugs?
I've used marijuana for about 10 or 12 years. And then about 7 or 8 months before I was incarcerated on this charge, I began using crystal meth.
What kind of work were you doing in California?
Before I was incarcerated, I was a truck driver.
Long distance or local?
Could you?
Long distance or local?
I was long distance, ma'am.
How long have you been a truck driver?
I started out driving trucks in 1995 with my father. My father owned his own trucking company. That's where I started out in Georgia. And then when I moved back to California, I became a security guard, and then I went back into trucking.
So what led you to willingly come to Louisiana to participate in a robbery? Why would you do that, given the fact that you had a job? Why would you come to Louisiana to commit a robbery?
At the time I committed this terrible crime, my life was in a very bad place. I was in a deep spiral. My wife had left me. She took the kids. I had recently lost my job, started using drugs, and I was broken. I just didn't care anymore.
So would you say your spiral was caused by your drug use, the breakup of your marriage, the loss of your job? Was that because you were actually using drugs?
Yes, ma'am. It all played a part in, my wife leaving and me losing my job, losing my kids. It all played a part.
So tell us what happened on the day of the robbery.
On the day of the robbery, which was June 27, 2003, I participated in the robbery of Bank One. I entered the bank and I ordered everybody to lie on the ground quietly. My co-conspirator was already in the bank. He jumped over the counter and we both began taking money from the teller. Once we took the money from the teller, we ran outside to the car. And while we were leaving the bank, the dive pack exploded, causing us to crash into the field. We both jumped out the vehicle and ran separate directions, and we both were captured shortly after.
So it was just two of you?
It was just two of us inside the bank, but there was others outside the bank. There was 3 more outside the bank. They didn't go in.
How many of you were prosecuted?
All of us was prosecuted.
And the gentleman who jumped over the counter, he received the same sentence as you?
No, ma'am. The one that was in the bank already, he received 35 years. The one that was outside received 7, and the female participant, she received 1.
And did you receive 40 because you were the one actually holding the gun on the people inside the bank?
Both of us was holding the gun, ma'am. I don't know why I received the most time, but both of us was holding the gun. We both are armed.
I've always wondered, just out of curiosity, what happens when the dye pack explodes?
When the dye pack explodes, it puts off real thick smoke, red dye smoke type, where you can't breathe.
It leaves marks on you, doesn't it?
Yes, ma'am. It leaves a red like dye on your clothing and stuff.
So, how long have you been at the state police barracks?
I've been here 9 years and 9 months, ma'am.
Tell us about before you got to the barracks. Where were you?
Before I was at Angola, and then I went to Cottonport for 7 years. I was at Cottonport for 7 years, ma'am.
And how did you end up at the state police barracks?
I requested to transfer to the state police barracks, and because of my skills, they needed mechanics over here, so I was transferred over here as a mechanic.
What kind of programs have you taken over the last 19 years?
I've earned in 2006, I've earned my GED at Angola. And 2009, when I got to Cottonport, I earned a diploma in diesel mechanic technology. I've taken 100-hour pre-release a couple times. I've taken living in balance. I've taken anger management 3 or 4 times, understanding angry feelings. I've taken parenting, taken financial management courses. I've taken spiritual courses, life recovery, taken several programs, ma'am.
So what program, let me back up. What programs have you taken to specifically address your substance abuse issue?
I've taken Celebrating Recovery. I've taken Life Recovery. I've taken Living in Balance. I'm currently taking NAAA, and I currently facilitate NAAA.
And what has been the most impactful for you from those programs? What have you gotten out of those programs that you think might help you maintain your sobriety whenever you're released?
The most impactful one would be, I would say, would be NAAA. And the thing that stuck out to me most, that struck me most was step one, that I admitted I was powerless over my addiction and my life had become unmanageable. Because before I didn't think I had a problem. And when I was able to admit that I had a problem, I was able to work the rest of the steps to make it work for me. And hearing from the different, volunteers that come into the program and share their stories and how long they were clean and how they were able to stay clean, that I know that I can stay clean too. If they can do it, I can do it as well.
Do you consider yourself a drug addict?
Yes, ma'am. I'll be a recovering addict for the rest of my life, ma'am.
What specific tools have you learned to ensure your continued sobriety?
Continue to go to the programs, continue to attend meetings, continue to have a sponsor and communicate with my sponsor and just ask for help when I need it.
How long have you been a facilitator for AA and NA?
I haven't been a facilitator that long, probably 5-6 months. The guy that was doing it had went home and I had an opportunity to step up and be a facilitator, and that's what I did.
Tell us about your disciplinary history. How many write-ups you had?
I've never had a write-up, ma'am, since I've been incarcerated. I've never had a disciplinary report.
And how do you think you managed that? That's very rare.
I managed that by just staying busy, staying positive, continuing to educate myself, and just doing what was asked of me and abiding by all the rules.
Tell us about your family. Your father's passed away, is that correct?
No, ma'am, my father's here today. My mother passed away.
All right. So what's your, if you were to be successful, what's your transition plan? I know initially it's with the Louisiana Parole Project, but long-term, what would be your transition plan?
My transition plan would be to, after I leave the parole project, I'm going to go transfer my parole to Arkansas to live with my dad, or I'll be.
I'm sorry. So your dad lives in Arkansas?
Yes, ma'am.
How old is your dad?
He's 75.
Do you have a job lined up in Arkansas?
No, I have a job lined up in Louisiana, WTD Trucking. They're going to give me a job there. And I also have my diesel mechanic diploma to fall back on. If that doesn't work out, I can find a job doing diesel mechanic work.
What can you tell us about Mr. Arnold's time at the barracks?
He's one of our leaders. We've had zero issue out of him. He's had numerous jobs, and not because he needed a new job, but because we needed him in different places. Just no problem at all. He's very well liked. He's helped everybody, offender and program, us, every time he's asked. I really can't speak enough for him. He's a very good leader, and we've had no problems.
I see in your file that you had a nice letter of recommendation from Sergeant Traer, who has retired from the state police. Eric, and you have the support of the Louisiana Parole Project. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Swear, is there anything you'd like to add?
I could say that Chris actually worked for me before I retired, and he dependable, skilled, capable, and always accepted the additional responsibility when we threw it at him. Very confident that he can be successful.
Thank you, sir. Okay, could we hear from the parole project? Mr. Clear, Mr. Myers.
Good morning, Terry Myers, the Legion of Parole Project. We began working all about 5 or 6 months ago, identifying as parole eligible under Act 122, and recognize program. Just 1 year, I have seen this in your lifetime. That is rare. And I think he did that exactly how he said it. By staying true to working hard and being compliant. The other national transition point is going to Arkansas, Arkansas is still on the front company there. He has a decent certification. He's very 50 years old. Parole project, obviously, we have to help them do that transition. We are providing skills they need. Trying to give them cooperation. We have to do that before bring the parole.
Thank you. Could we hear from Mr. James Arnold? Bob. Thank you. Okay. Mr. James, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Hear us? Have you have an issue with your audio?
This is James Arnold.
Sir,
Yes,
what would you like us to know about your son?
I want to tell you my son, James, Christopher, who is applying for parole. I live in El Dorado, Arkansas, with my wife, Georgia Arnold. After 20 years in business, I own my home and my financial stable. I want the board to know that my wife and I will help my son. I have always tried my best to steer my son in the right direction. But as you know, our children grow up making their own decisions and mistakes. I do not attempt to overlook Chris' action, as he was not raised to rob people. I have seen a great change in his life the past 20 years. His whole outlook, what he desires out of life, has changed. I know that he is sorry for his action. That day affected so many people. My son has never had a write-up in this excellent conduct record, and great work effort was noted by prison officials who recommend his transfer to the Louisiana State Police Barracks in 2013, and now works at DOC headquarters. I am asking the board to please grant my son parole. I will lend my son whatever support he needs, housing, transportation, finances, if you grant him parole. Thank you so much for your consideration in my son's freedom.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. We appreciate your remarks and your support. I think we also have with us by Zoom, Ms. Mary Mitchell.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am. What would you like us to know?
Just that my husband and I have had correspondence with Mr. Arnold via email and in person. Well, not email, I'm sorry. Regular paper mail and in person. Over the last few years, myself and my husband have agreed to hire Mr. Arnold on a 90-day probationary period with our company, WTD Trucking. Where we would have my husband or one of our other truckers in the vehicle with him for the first 90 days and give him the chance to prove himself, to get back on his feet and be a productive individual in society. And I mean, if there are any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to, just ask me or contact me at any time. But and his diesel mechanic certification would definitely come into play with that as well, because in this type of business, there's always somebody looking for a diesel mechanic.
Where is your business, WTD Trucking located?
We are located in Opelousas, Louisiana, but we travel out of state.
Right. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you and your husband for the work that you do.
Thank you.
I think that we've gotten everybody who has indicated they'd like to speak. So at this time, Mr. Arnold, is there a statement you'd like to make?
Yes, ma'am. First off, I would like to thank the board for their time and consideration in my parole hearing. I would also want the victims to know that I'm deeply remorseful for the pain and trauma that I've caused them. My actions were unjustifiable and I take full responsibility for them. I'm ashamed and embarrassed of my crime. They were all totally innocent. They did nothing wrong. They did not deserve what I did to them. I am not the same person I was 20 years ago. I now have the tools and the education to become a productive member of society if given the opportunity. I have my GED, diesel mechanic diploma, many self-help programs, and strong family support to help me in any capacity needed. I've also learned to make better life choices so that I will never return to prison again. So I humbly ask this board to please look at who I am today and not who I was 20 years ago. Thank you.
The board is prepared to vote. Mrs. Jackson will be voting first.
All right, Mr. Arnold, you had a very good interview today. I was impressed by the remarks from the people of the state police barracks about how well you've done. It's remarkable that you've had 0 write-ups in the entire time through incarceration. You've done excellent programming. You have a support system. You have support of the Parole project. You have great skills that make employable. So I think you're ready. So my vote today would be to grant your parole first to the Louisiana Parole project, and then to out-of-state compact to the state of Arkansas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Arnold, a job well done. No disciplinary write-ups and putting you to incarceration. Mr. Swear and Lieutenant Bowen, they don't make comments like you made this morning without them being true. And if you work with Mr. Swear, you probably did a very good job. So basically, You've done everything else expected of you. I think that you're fully rehabilitated. You have a good transition plan. So therefore, I'm going to vote to grant your early release with the same condition as been rejected. I usually put a curfew on, but because you're driving trucks long distances, I'm gonna leave that up to your parole officer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Arnold, I do concur based on your excellent record. My vote also is to, grant you parole, with the same special conditions eventually to Arkansas. Good luck to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lieutenant, I think that concludes our business at the
Yes, ma'am.
barracks. And adjourn. It is 9:43 a.m. Thanks for accommodating us today.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
He didn't shake his hand. What was up with that? Oh, there you go. Okay. I was a little confused for a second. I'm like, whoa, he just totally did not shake his hand. I think it's only the second time I've seen someone with a tie and a nice shirt, and I wonder if it's because they're in the barracks that they get that, they take care of them and give them that. But man, can you imagine? Don't rob a bank in Louisiana. I think that's the moral of the story here. He got what, 45 years for robbing a bank. For some reason, from my perspective, it's like a bank just, when you see all of these hearings, like robbing a bank seems like one of the lesser offenses. Maybe because Hollywood just makes it out, there's so many movies on it and it feels like a victimless crime, although I know it's not. When anyone there can go through PTSD and all that stuff. But still, you kind of don't expect that kind of sentence. But it might have been the best thing for him. It seems that he was really going off on a bad track and he was addicted to meth, and that doesn't go anywhere good. So maybe it ended up working out for him. I know he lost 20 years of his life, but he does seem to have to just be set up for success right now. And hey, being a diesel mechanic, you can make good money doing that. And if he's just wants to do truck driving, some people really enjoy that. And you make good money too. He really, just everything about him just seemed authentic. One of the better interviews I've heard in a while. It was interesting how Miss Jackson asked him about the dye pack. That was interesting. She was just curious what it was like to get hit by it. And it seems like their plan of jumping over the counter maybe could have prevented that. The idea that they'd be grabbing the cash themselves could have prevented the dye pack, but somehow the dye pack got in there. And man, it blew up on them in their getaway vehicle. They didn't make it very far. That was probably not how they envisioned it at all. But yeah, moral of the story, don't go to Louisiana and rob a bank because they'll lock you up for a long time. But seemed like a real happy conclusion to the story, and I was happy to see it. Love to hear your thoughts on this one.